Right now, you are wearing clothes. You probably put them on without thinking. You grabbed whatever was closest, pulled it over your body, and moved on with your day. Simple, automatic, completely obvious. But here is the strange part. No other animal on Earth does this. And the real reason you do it has almost nothing to do with being cold. For most of human history, the answer seemed obvious. Clothes keep you warm. Early humans lived in cold climates. They needed protection. They killed animals, stripped the hides, and wrapped themselves up. Clean, simple, done. Except that explanation falls apart almost immediately when you look at the actual evidence. The oldest clothing ever discovered is not from a cold region, and the species that first started covering their bodies was already equipped with something far more efficient than fur. Your ancestors were not helpless against the cold. They had fire. They had shelter. They had each other. What they did not have, and what turns out to be the real driver of one of the most defining behaviors in human history, was a solution to a much smaller, much more irritating problem. And when researchers finally cracked it, they did not find it in a cave. They found it on a louse. In 2011, a team of geneticists led by David Reed at the University of Florida published a study that used an unexpected method to date the origin of clothing. They studied the DNA of human body lice. Body lice, unlike head lice, can only survive in clothing. They need fabric to lay their eggs, to shelter in, to live. Which means body lice could not have existed before clothing existed. By sequencing the genetic divergence between head lice and body lice, tracing back to the moment the two populations split, Reed's team calculated that humans began wearing clothes roughly 170,000 years ago. Some estimates push it even further back, to as early as 83,000 years ago by more conservative calculations. But the consensus lands somewhere in that deep range. Long before the ice ages that most people assume drove this behavior. Long before humans left Africa. Think about that for a moment. Your ancestors were wearing something, wrapping themselves in something, in equatorial Africa, one of the warmest regions on the planet. Why? The answer brings you back to that louse. And to a second, even more unexpected discovery about your own naked skin. Humans are almost uniquely hairless among primates. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, all covered in dense fur. You are not. And for a long time, evolutionary biologists puzzled over why. The most widely accepted theory, developed in large part by anthropologist Nina Jablonski at Penn State University, is that your ancestors lost their body hair to regulate heat. As early hominins moved from forested environments onto open African savannas, they needed to run, to chase prey over long distances in direct sunlight. Dense fur would have caused fatal overheating. So, over hundreds of thousands of years, you evolved to sweat instead. Millions of eccrine sweat glands distributed across your nearly bare skin, capable of cooling your body far more efficiently than any fur coat. It worked brilliantly. You became the endurance predators of the ancient world. You could run an antelope to exhaustion in the midday heat because you could cool yourself and it could not. Your naked skin was not a weakness. It was a superpower, but it came with a cost. Without fur, you became vulnerable to something your furry primate relatives were mostly protected against: parasites, specifically ectoparasites, the kind that live on the surface of the body, ticks, mites, fleas, and the lice that would eventually become the genetic timestamp for the invention of clothing. A body covered in thick fur is actually a hostile environment for many of these parasites. The structure of the hair makes attachment difficult. The density of the coat makes navigation slow. But smooth, warm, exposed skin? That is an open invitation. And parasites, as biologist Mark Pegel and zoologist Walter Bodmer argued in a paper published in Biology Letters, may have done something else entirely unexpected to the human body. They may have driven the evolution of skin color itself. Dark melanin-rich skin, which evolved in ancestral African populations, provides a powerful barrier against UV radiation. But recent research suggests it also has antimicrobial properties, making the exposed skin surface more hostile to bacterial and parasitic invasion. Your skin was already fighting back, but it needed help. Clothing was that help. The first coverings were almost certainly not stitched or tailored. They were draped. Animal skins, large leaves, bark. Wrapped loosely around the torso and secured somehow, with vines, with sinew, with crude early cordage. Not elegant, not fashionable, but effective at one critical thing: creating a physical barrier between your exposed skin and the world of parasites living in the grass, the soil, and the bodies of the animals you hunted and slept beside. Here is what makes this theory so compelling. Clothing as parasite protection explains something that the cold weather theory never could: why clothing appeared before the cold climates that supposedly required it. It also explains the geographic pattern. The oldest indirect evidence for clothing, hide-scraping tools, bone needles, ochre used to treat hides, appears first in Africa and the Middle East, not in the northern latitudes where temperature alone would predict it. And then something else happened. Something that transformed a practical tool into one of the most powerful social technologies in human history. You started using clothing to signal. Anthropologists have a phrase for this: costly signaling theory. The idea, developed extensively by researchers like Ahmad Zahavi and later applied to human behavior by scholars like William Irons, is that organisms evolved to display signals that are expensive to produce, because expensive signals are honest signals. You cannot fake a peacock's tail. You cannot fake the physical cost of growing it. And in early human societies, you could not easily fake the social cost of wearing something rare, elaborate, or beautiful. The person who showed up wearing something no one else had was communicating something real: status, skill, access to resources, social connections. This shift from clothing as protection to clothing as signal happened gradually, and the two functions layered on top of each other rather than replacing each other. By the time humans were leaving Africa and spreading across the globe, clothing was already doing double duty. It kept parasites off the body, and it told everyone around you who you were. By the time tailored clothing appeared, somewhere around 30,000 years ago, based on the bone needles found at sites across Eurasia, the second function had largely eclipsed the first in terms of cultural complexity. The needles were not making simple wraps. They were making fitted garments. Garments that clung to the body's shape, garments that could be decorated, garments that could mark you as a member of a particular group, a particular rank, a particular story. Every culture that has ever existed on Earth has had clothing of some kind. Even cultures in tropical climates where warmth was never an issue. Even cultures that wore almost nothing by temperate world standards still used body coverings, adornment, and wrapping to mark social boundaries, ritualistic states, and identity. The anthropologist Alfred Kroeber documented this across cultures on every continent. The covering of the body was never purely practical. It was always, simultaneously, a language. And that language never stopped evolving. Today, the fashion industry generates over $2 trillion annually. People spend more on clothing than on education in many parts of the world. You make judgments about strangers within seconds of seeing them, and a significant portion of that judgment is based on what they are wearing. Research by Karen Pine at the University of Hertfordshire found that what people wear directly affects their own cognitive performance and confidence, a phenomenon she called enclothed cognition. The clothes you put on in the morning do not just tell other people who you are, they tell you who you are. So when you reach into your closet tomorrow morning, consider this. The impulse you are following is 170,000 years old. It started not with vanity or warmth, but with the desperate ingenuity of a nearly naked primate trying to survive on a savanna full of things that wanted to get under its skin, quite literally. The first human who draped an animal skin across their body was not making a fashion statement. They were solving a problem. But in solving that problem, they accidentally invented one of the most powerful forms of human communication ever to exist. You never just get dressed. You have never just gotten dressed. Every morning, without thinking about it, you are doing something your ancestors invented in the African heat, watched evolve across 100,000 years of human migration, and passed down to you encoded so deeply in your behavior that it feels like nothing at all. Just getting dressed. Just another ordinary morning. The most ancient ritual you will perform today.